Randy is absolutely correct. We've been blessed with this opportunity. You know, I stood in front of here agreeing with Randy 5 years ago. It doesn't make sense. And I've said it before. If I was in George and Lewis's position at that time, I would have done the same thing. I would have got the trail, and I wouldn't have done as good a job because I would have been, the plan would always be to take the tracks out. Vehicle-to-vehicle communication systems are coming out, you guys. Look it up. It's basically automation systems are going to make your freeways more efficient, going to make your roadways more efficient. A fixed rail system is very expensive for a community like this to own. You can't afford it. That rail trail is not wide enough for a bike path and a train. If you start at the boardwalk, you go under Murray Avenue Bridge, the tracks are right in the middle. You'd have to move them. You go over the harbor. Are you going to get a fourth trestle built? That's not going to happen. The benefits to our community for a bike path is enormous. Yeah, you're going to have to go back to the CTC and give them back some money. Probably not as much as you're going to need to because you have some freight down on the over in Wattsville with North Shore biofuels. Anyways, the other thing to look at is you basically have a vacant lot, a 20 to 200 foot wide section vacant lot that goes through your community. Aptos Village, we have this vacant lot that sits there. Yeah, you might have a train go through there once a week, but think about the benefits to our community to have a roundabout there. What about Seabright and Murray Avenue? A roundabout there. There's so much potential here, you guys. And I understand the political play here. Like I said, I know Carl. And work with the private, work with the farmers. You can get the money to pay them back. So I think that, I'd say that if I was in George's position at the time, I would have fought to get the money to go buy this asset. The concern I have is now that it's owned by the public entity, and this is an agency. You guys your charter is not to own property. Your charter is to go get funding. You should be selling this to the city of Santa Cruz, to the city of Capitola. You are an agency. You should not own property. Your charter is to go get funding and distribute it. You don't have the knowledge to manage property. And you're having your staff do all this, that's an expense that's not part of your charter. The last thing I want to say is Iowa Pacific's not your friend. When we were trying to Aptos Village have a road across the trestle, Parade Avenue, not a lot of people know this, we said, can we have access to have a road go over it? Iowa Pacific said, sure, $750,000. What's the $750,000 for? Seemed like a good number. They're not your friend. They made their revenue probably was about $100,000. Their profit's about $6,000. So you guys have a great opportunity here, and I think that you should take advantage, and hopefully your feasibility study comes out soon. It was scheduled to be out by the end of May, so you're a little late. So hopefully it comes out soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address us? Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Michael McBride. I'm a local resident and business owner, and I'm listening to this for the first time. But Randy, thank you very much for the points that you're bringing out, which is that this corridor, which was purchased with what I'm assuming to be tax revenue from the county, from residents like myself, it needs to be productive to the county and needs to be used by the greater good and not by a single business or a very limited number of people. Now, John had mentioned that we had to look at what the use of the rail was previously and consider how that's going to go forward. Well, from from what I see is we're not moving sand from Sand City to CEMEX plant anymore, and we're not harvesting lumber and needing to move trees out of the Santa Cruz Mountains to be milled. As far as the passenger rail study, I am a little bit disappointed that it hasn't been released yet, and I don't know exactly what the expectation is. That the previous two studies found that it was not going to be feasible to run a passenger trail. So I have to say that I've grown up in an area where a rail corridor was converted to a public recreational trail with great opposition, and the success of that trail, Capitol Crescent Trail, exceeded anyone's imagination. It's used by more people than it would ever have been thought that would use it. And the problems that we have here with graffiti and things that are happening on this rail corridor that should not be happening would be, when you have a trail open, when you have a corridor open to the public, you have the eyes of the world out there, and there is nothing that is going to happen without it being seen and being reported. I just got to say that I hope that at some point the county puts this corridor to use for the greater good of the community and makes it into a recreational trail. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address us? This is an informational item, so it comes back to us without a requirement of any motion. We'll next move on to item...
Chair.
Oh, Mr. Johnson, sorry
Before
about
we
that.
close on that, I just have one last comment. Michael brings up an important point that as an asset, if you're a businessman, it has to be a productive asset. And I get the sense that in some ways, I'm not so sure that this particular commission is in tune with what the public really wants. Now, we're going to be getting a evaluation of the feasibility of this passenger rail system. If it doesn't come back with glowing possibilities, my recommendation that there be a public advisory vote that goes to the people and either confirms that this commission is in step with what the public wants, or goes contrary to that possibility. So, I just don't think there's enough progress with this, notwithstanding your conversation with CTC and so forth. There are ways to make sure that this asset is productive. So my recommendation would be an advisory vote among the people of the county of Santa Cruz to see if we are really moving in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you. And, we've owned this asset for less than 2.5 years, so there's a lot of work that takes to put all the pieces together. We've moved actually very quickly. We've award-winning plan about a sanctuary scenic trail. We have completed major construction on the line, and we are in the final stages of having a report that we'll be able to share with the public about a feasibility study for a passenger rail system. So I'll next move on to item number 24, which is the rail motorcar excursion on the Santa Cruz branch rail line. Luis, Mr. Mendez.
Good morning, Commissioners. Some of you might remember that 2 years ago, the RTC, in 2013, the RTC approved a temporary license to the North American Railcar Operators Association for an excursion of their motor cars from Felton down to Watsonville. They also work with the Big Trees Railroad for that excursion. It happened in May 4th and 5th of 2013. NARCOA is a nonprofit organization dedicated to the preservation and safe legal operation of railroad equipment that was historically used for maintenance of way, and they have about 2,000 members. So on your staff report, some of you may not know what exactly is one of these rail motor cars. In your staff report, there are some photos. There's one photo of the cars when they went through here in 2013 by the boardwalk, and then also the attachment number 1, which is frequently asked questions about the motor car hobby, has some photos of the cars at different locations, so you get an idea of what the cars are like. They're not very large. Generally, they have small engines. They don't run very fast. And some of those who have larger engines and could run faster, they're limited by the fact that there are other cars along with them that are slower, and therefore they usually keep their speed is about 15, 20 miles per hour maximum at any given point. Now, NARCOA has asked the Santa Cruz Monterey Bay Railway and the RTC for permission to do an excursion on April 25th and 26th of this year from Davenport to Watsonville. So now that the bridges have been, the bridge rehabilitation work has been completed, and the bridge in Wilder Ranch is no longer out, they can operate from Davenport all the way to Watsonville. There is a sand dune that blocks part of the rail line there in Bonnie Doon Beach. It's just sort of a natural occurrence, and in the past the railroad would always go periodically and clear that out. NARCO has agreed to clear that out for the railroad so they can operate, and if you've been out there, it's quite sizable now, and over time it gets bigger and bigger. We did negotiate with them a fee, and since they're going to do some work to clear that sand dune, we thought a $500 fee for their operation would be reasonable. They agreed to that. We did ask Big Trees and Santa Cruz and Monterey Bay Railway about what's typical to charge for one of these operations, and they thought that was reasonable as well. And Santa Cruz and Monterey Bay Railway will be along with the excursion. They have to be, since they're the official operator on the rail line, and they have to make sure that whatever happens out there is safe. So they will be with them to ensure the safety, and they will be charging for their services. Now, NARCOA, they do have, if you look at their frequently asked questions, they do have a training program for their members on how to operate on the cars on rail lines, and they want to make sure that it is safe, and they want to get permission to be able to do this over and over again. So they want to make sure they're respectful as well of in their operations, and they have been operating on the Big Trees rail line for years, so they are allowed to come back year after year, and their report was that they are a good group to work with. They're conscientious and respectful, and they do I think safety is the utmost consideration for them. So staff does recommend that the RTC approve a NARCOA rail motor car excursion on the Santa Cruz Branch Rail Line for April 25th and 26th. For a fee of $500. If the RTC does approve this, we will provide them with a temporary license for that operation, and that license will have indemnification language indemnifying the RTC